So I'm Roddy, I'm the Group Head of Digital Skills at Windsor Forest College Group, and I'm also an English teacher. So on Thursdays I teach, and on the other 4 days I teach teachers how to upskill themselves with AI, our internal software, and Google Workspace.
Brilliant. Okay, wow, that's really good, because today we're going to be talking a little bit about AI.
Convenient.
So, very convenient. So the first thing I wanted to ask really was, what do educators need to be aware of when they're looking at implementing AI tools in schools?
I think the first thing that's really beneficial and that we've learned out of this is that colleges and schools where there's strong, brave leadership to say, let's try AI, seem to get the most out of it, because it needs to come from the top. Typically speaking, I think if a chief exec is a bit nervous and has cold feet around it, they're more likely to lock the door, keep it shut, and not let anyone get anything good out the cupboard. But and I can understand why as well. I think particularly they are in a vulnerable position of wanting to understand a situation fully before wanting to advocate for it. Whereas this is such a new space, I don't think there is the sort of 5-year long-term research paper written on it to know whether or not it's a positive thing. But that said, innovation is about failing fast and failing forward. So you make a mistake, you trip up, you get back up, you carry on. And I think it's interesting, I've heard that theme a lot this week at BET and at pre-BET events, is that we need to be better at teaching students that it is okay to fail. I certainly know generationally that for me, that's something I'm quite paranoid around. I don't want to fail. But actually making a mistake early so that you can more quickly learn from it is a good thing. I think education, ironically enough, is a massive thing around AI, letting teachers and students know how it works so that they can better appraise its outputs. So I tend to liken it to the Wizard of Oz and that lovely moment where Toto reveals the wizard behind the curtain. And he's there cranking out code. I think explaining it to people in a relatable way so that, yes, they see this sort of scary human-like monster, but then behind the curtain it is just code being generated, I think is slightly reassuring. It gets round people hoping that a plagiarism checker is going to give them a silver bullet answer of, yes, this student cheated, whereas actually, of course, it's building it one word at a time. So I think education makes a big difference. And then for students, the education piece is about the ethics. It's about talking to them about when they can use it and when they can't use it. I've seen some colleges have done great stuff with traffic light systems where they've got, red is writing an essay for you, and amber might be researching for an essay, but so long as you cite it in the bibliography, and then green might be asking it to help you find a website that will give you information about a topic. So I think that's quite a nice stepped way to talk about it, but just covering it as a broader ethics conversation, which sounds dry, and I think that's why a lot of people have avoided it, is because they don't feel confident enough in ethics themselves to discuss it. But I think we know the difference between right and wrong, and education is about building the society I think we want and preparing people for the world. So actually having that conversation with the people who are not just the future but the now, so that we understand what they want, means that the values are connected with it, and AI is part of that world rather than a bolt-on on the side.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I think there are some really good examples in there of how you can make it work and distill some of that information down a bit more succinctly as well. Ethics is a huge conversation. So.
And it can be quite scary. I think AI is something that people have often first come across in dystopian novels and film. So they've seen The Matrix and we're pulped and fed to the machine, or they've seen Terminator. And I think people's anxiety comes from column inches as well, suggesting that this is the end of education, whereas actually, just like any change, any shift, any new thing, it takes a period of acclimatization, but we need to find out how to use it and harness it for better. And I don't think that's particularly difficult. I think it's about experimenting with it, finding out how we can use it. And I think, as I say, the ethics conversation is scary, but I think it needs to be. It's just, when is it okay? When is it not okay?
Can you talk to us a little bit about Windsor Forest College Group? What kind of AI tools and things have worked well for you? What have you found beneficial?
So we've got Winnie, which is our own private AI. It's the first private AI NFE, but that is a chatbot with a sort of supercharged chatbot in that it's got access to our policies, our website, it knows our courses. So that means the answers it's giving are contextual to the organisation, and that's really valuable to us because even just in a simple use case, I was sick a few months ago and I couldn't remember what time I had to let my line manager know, whereas suddenly I was able to go, Winnie, what time do I need to let my manager know? And it's spat out very quickly, 7:30 if you're teaching 8. If you're not, exactly. Where's that policy? Which one is it in? So I think as a sort of virtualization, a representation of our college, that's a really useful thing. That's been popular, but also that's seen a cultural shift, I'd say, in that because we've innovated in that space, 81% of our staff say that they feel more confident to experiment with AI and to use AI tools.
Because they've had that experience.
I think so. I think a little bit of, as a group, we're doing something a bit different. And also, it's a bit of pride in that, a bit of a sort of shared journey. I think some of it is understanding how to prompt, because prompting is a core skill across all generative AI tools. So knowing that it is just called ChatGPT because it's a chatbot and you can chat to it, and you don't need a PhD in prompt engineering or to front load a prompt that's 3 pages long. Sure, you'll get a great output, but if it goes wrong, you won't necessarily know where. Whereas we all know how to return a pair of trousers to ASOS by chatting to what is fundamentally a bot. We know how to say the words that get the thing we want and to refine what we get. If we don't get the answer we want, we answer back. I'm sorry, I can't do that. Try harder. We know what to type. I asked it to summarise an 88-page DFE document that the chief exec had sent me. It squashed it down. I suddenly realised I'd asked for 200 words, and that was more words than I really wanted to read right there and then. So it was shorter, and it truncated it again. So I think some of that confidence to know how to prompt has translated well into things like Firefly, which is because we've got an Adobe site-wide license for things like Acrobat Pro and for Photoshop for our media students. It also means we can have a great time playing with Firefly and generating images. But the prompt that you put in is going to determine what you get out. Garbage in, garbage out. Gigo, as Juliana, one of my ESOL colleagues, was very astutely pointing out, is that's what it comes back to. You'll only get in as good as you get out as good as you put in. So Firefly's been another good one. I know that a lot of people have had fun experimenting with Goblin tools, particularly for SEN students and for people who are neurodivergent in terms of breaking down tasks. So for our Alfie learners, it might be we're organising a trip into town, and then it can break it down to plan the bus, check the timetable, make sure you've got cash with you, or check the payment methods. All the different things that you might not have considered. And like any AI output, it needs checking. And 80% of it you might have thought of before, but it's got you started. And then there might be 20% that you need to edit, or that you hadn't thought of. That's been popular. I mean, some of our earliest pioneers were on ChatGPT with private licenses. Obviously, we steer them away from that quite strongly. For any student data has to go in Winnie, because we know that we've got safety parameters in for that. But now Copilot and Gemini both have a line on them to say that they're not training the model. So that, which wasn't there a year ago, is now really reassuring to see. So I think
it's positive to see companies making that.
Clocking that data security is obviously paramount.
When we talk about children.
Exactly.
As well.
Education, that's the most important thing. I mean, there are so many tools coming out all the time. I know that Udio generating music has gone down very well. I think the list of, there isn't a definitive list of AI tools that people use. I know that Canva, we've just got a site license for Canva, which is incredibly popular, and there's some teams who are real advocates for that. I know it's got some incredible AI tools in there for magically zipping out the background of photographs. I was talking to somebody earlier today who uses it, and I compared it to the Photoshop I'd done, and it's actually done a better, faster job. So I think some of it is just baked in and is becoming smart tech, as in we like tech that helps us, makes our lives easier. It doesn't necessarily need to have AI as a badge on it. We know that Google's had AI in its products for years. Look at being able to finish the end of a sentence in a Gmail. That's been around for about 4, 5, if not 8 years, I think. So it's suddenly hit the headlines because it's got to a point where the chatbot can create an illusion of reality. But actually, that's generative AI. I'm more excited about the next stage, which is artificial general intelligence, AGI, and that's the bit that passes the Turing test. That's the bit that is it capable of surpassing human reasoning. That's a bit more the sci-fi stuff, and I don't think we're there yet. I think AI for now is a tool that can help.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So my last question really was, the schools that are using AI tools, how can they like maximise it and get the most out of there?
Firstly, I'd say turn it on. This has been my rallying cry today, so turn it on. So I think that thing about leadership and being confident to try something new, that the education, both educating our students and ourselves, and the teamwork together to share things. I mean, some brilliant practice that I witnessed in our ESOL team back at Slough and Langley College was a teacher who had a live Google Doc that the students were contributing the prompts that they'd had success with.
Yeah.
And so they were educating each other. Like one brilliant thing that came out of that was not writing correct my work, but list my errors. Because then instead of it regurgitating your work and it's no longer your own because it's paraphrased it into its own refined, polished product, but it was just giving you a worksheet of, you've spelt that wrong, check that paragraph, that could do with more evidence in it, probably slightly more kindly than that, but that sort of sharing I think is really important. But yeah, turning it on, that's the sort of 3 steps, the leadership, the education and the teamwork that leads to, let's do this. I don't think it needs hours of strategy and policy and planning. I think Winnie as a chatbot needed a lot more of a team effort from the IT team to spin it up. But there are things off the shelf, even just using Gemini or Copilot to chat with. If you've already got a site license for those to Microsoft or Google, you can definitely get the benefit out of prompting in with those and just give it a go, because it's chat. We're only going to discover from each other. Yeah. And there are new shiny models coming down the road all the time, and I'm excited to see what they can do, but I'm also excited as people acclimatise to the ones we've got, what the human use cases are with them, to get new ideas out of them. Absolutely. And people sharing, I've just tried this, because it's the human creativity on top of that model that's
and how they utilise it.
The bit that really makes it interesting to me. It's the bit that supercharges it. Also, it means that the older models become cheaper and more available to education to use, so that's a good thing. Brilliant.
Thank you, Roddy.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Kat.